My name is Lisa Hayes, and at 34 years old, you're a disgrace, my dad yelled as I was kicked out of my own home. 15 years later, my cousin's lie unraveled. But it was too late. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. When I was 22, one falsehood broke everything I believed I understood about family, love, and trust. I was a senior in high school with my entire future ahead of me. My parents, Daniel and Martha, were always proud of me for aspiring to the profession of architecture. At least I think they were. Then one night, my cousin Chloe sat in our living room, her hands trembling and tears streaming down her face. She turned to my parents and stated, "Lisa had an affair with my husband Alex." I recall giggling in surprise. "Chloe, stop! That's not true and you know it," I pleaded, my voice cracking. But Chloe buried her face in my mother's arms, sobbing. My father stood there, his face contorted with wrath. "Pack your belongings, Lisa. You will not disgrace this family any longer." I went to my knees. "Dad, please, I didn't do this. Ask Alex. Check his phone. Check mine. You'll see the truth." My father looked away. My mother screamed, "How could you do this to your own cousin?" Then, with tears in his eyes, my boyfriend David murmured, "I can't believe you. I don't even know who you are." As he walked out, by the morning, everyone at school knew. The stares, whispers, home wrecker, manipulator, and liar. Each phrase pierced deeper than the previous. I couldn't handle it. I dropped out of school only weeks before graduation, leaving town with only a duffel bag. I drove 4 states away, stayed in inexpensive hotels, and found employment on construction sites. Long, terrible days in the sun, but I was determined to survive. Years passed, and I worked my way up. I saved every dime, learned every trade, and started my own business. From the outside, I seemed like a success story, but inwardly, I felt the weight of betrayal. When my father died, no one contacted me. I discovered it a week later while going through Facebook, gazing at images of a funeral I hadn't been invited to. Meanwhile, Chloe thrived. My parents, out of remorse, paid for her education. She married Alex, a polished lawyer, and they created the ideal life. Holiday greetings, happy family photographs, all I had hoped for. Then, just weeks ago, their son Max became seriously ill. He required a liver transplant. Chloe was not a match. Desperate, my brother James offered. Seeing as we have the same blood type, he contacted later and said, "I figured if Alex is really his dad, I had to step up." However, when the physicians tested him and Alex, bewilderment filled the room. The doctor added, "You're not a match, and there's no biological relationship between Alex and the child." That's when the truth hit. The affair story never made sense. I never touched Alex. Chloe had lied, and for 15 years, I bore the consequences for something I never did. Now my phone won't stop buzzing. My mother is weeping on voicemail. "Lisa, please come home. We made a mistake," James implored. "You were right all along. Please, let's fix this." Even David, after all these years, messaged me, but I do not respond. I made my existence without them, brick by brick, scar by scar. Now they want me back. And it isn't the worst part. It's only been 1 day since my cousin Chloe's life shattered under the weight of reality. For 15 years, I carried it like a stone chain around my chest, pulling me down into quiet resentment and a life I made on my own as my family turned away. I believed exposing her lies would set me free. Instead, I feel as if I'm trapped in a strange limbo, neither vindicated nor at peace, but somewhere between wrath and tiredness. I had a terrible time sleeping that night after learning the truth. My phone flashed up constantly on the bedside table, buzzing so often that it banged against the wood like an incessant alarm. Calls, voicemails, messages, and my mother, brother, uncles, aunts, and cousins, who had not spoken my name in over a decade, all remembered my existence. I left it there and gazed at the ceiling, my chest tight with the flow of memories. The sharpest of all was the night when Chloe, teary and shivering, said the words that destroyed my life. Lisa had an affair with my husband. At the time, I was 19. 19. With my entire future ahead of me, grades good enough for scholarships and admission letters ready to be opened. Within weeks of her deception, it was all gone. I dropped out of school because I knew no one would believe me, that the murmur of checking messages or alibis was drowned out by a flood of fury. My father's displeasure was the loudest. He spit my name as if it were garbage. My mother wailed as if she had lost her daughter. My brother stared at me as if I were a stranger who had entered our home. David, the boy I loved, gave me nothing but a look of disgust. At the age of 19, I walked out of that house with a single duffel bag and slept wherever I could afford. I toiled hours stacking shelves and days lugging bricks. My hands blistered while Chloe attended college, her tuition paid for by the same family that had abandoned me. The resentment has never left me, not in 15 long years. And now, a day after the truth is revealed, they stand outside my door. When I drew back the curtain that morning and saw sunlight carving sharp lines across the blinds, I froze. My brother James's old truck, the rusted one he drove in high school, was parked at the curb. My mother stood beside it, resting against the hood. Her shoulders were slumped, and her arms were firmly wrapped about herself as if she was bracing against more than just the chilly morning breeze. "Lisa!" she shouted, her raspy voice echoing across the street. "Lisa, please open the door and let us talk," James said, his voice calmer but tinged with desperation. "You don't have to say anything. Just give us a few minutes. That's all we want." I remained in the hallway, gazing at the door, my fingers quivering as they approached the handle. For a brief moment, I wished to open it, go outside, and feel my mother's arms wrap around me like they had when I was a child. But then came the flashback. My father's eyes were full of fire as he labeled me a disgrace, the anger in Chloe's voice. My relatives whispered behind closed doors that I was a monster. Where were the voices then? I took a step back, my heart hammering. I would not respond. My mother's voice trembled as she tried again, tears spilling through her words. "Lisa, it wasn't your fault. We know that now. Please don't shut us out." James knocked, not too hard, but enough to have the sound reverberate in my skull. "Lisa, I beg you, don't let this be the end." I remained mute. I heard muffled weeping, shuffled footsteps, the bang of a truck door, and the roar of the engine as it rolled down the street. Only then did I allow myself to breathe, and what came out of my lungs was more bitter than air. I persuaded myself that was the end of it, and that I could resume my normal life. I was mistaken. Later that day, I arrived at the construction site where I work. Dust hung heavy in the air, and sunlight glinted off the steel beams. I'd rolled up my sleeves, perspiration soaking my back. When I heard it, it was James's voice. "Lisa." I looked around, and there he was, standing in the center of the site, his face tired but resolute. The workers halted their work. Metal clanged to quiet, and drills sputtered and stalled. Every eye was on us. James came carefully, hands raised as if he was scared I might flee. "I know you don't want me here, but I had to come. You don't understand how sorry I am, how sorry we all are." I clenched my teeth, my voice low and fierce. "You shouldn't be here." He continued to approach. "We were wrong. I was wrong. I should have stood by you. I should have fought for you. Instead, I stayed quiet while you lost everything, while you were 19 and begging us to believe you. I just stood there, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." My crew shuffled uneasily, watching the heat rush through me, embarrassment and rage entwined. I turned aside and walked back to the house's half-built structure. James yelled, "Lisa, don't do this. Just one conversation. That's all I'm asking." I paused, whirled around, and my words cut like glass. One conversation. You had 15 years, James. 15 years, while I clawed my way out of the dirt, while I slept in motels and worked myself bloody. You could have asked for one conversation then, but you didn't. His eyes shined as his lips parted, but I turned back and went away. Dust whirled around my boots, and behind me, stillness hung thick as stone. That night, news began to spread around the family. Chloe, previously known as the Golden Girl, was condemned in every whispered talk. Relatives who had previously praised her bravery mocked her name. They dubbed her a liar and a thief who drained the family's money for her studies while I struggled to make ends meet. The tide had changed, but it was too late for me to care. Chloe's world was disintegrating. Her son Max deteriorated in the hospital, his tiny body waging a hopeless struggle. Her spouse, Alex, couldn't take the falsehoods anymore. As a lawyer committed to the truth, he packed his things and departed, unwilling to stay in a house based on falsehood. Even though she had damaged me, I couldn't harden my heart against Max. He was innocent, a child caught up in the aftermath of his mother's lies. That notion seared me from within. Calls poured in from uncles, aunts, and cousins. Their comments were sickly sweet with remorse. We always had doubts. We never believed her. Not fully. Lies. All of them. Where were these doubts when I was 19 and begging them to check the facts? Where were they when I had to leave my school, my future, my life? And then came a shock. My email pinged that evening as I sat at my computer, the lamp's faint light throwing shadows. An email. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Uncle Richard, Chloe's father. My palms shook as I clicked it open. His comments were brief, yet they struck like a hammer. Lisa, I know you have no reason to hear from me. I know the damage is irreversible, but you should know that your father left something for you in his will. I will not tell you what it is, but I beg you, come home and see for yourself. If you want to go again later, no one will stop you. I sat back, my chest tight, my mind racing. My father, the man who had dismissed me and refused to even look at me after Chloe's accusation, had left me something. Was it guilt? A harsh reminder of what I'd lost? Was it anything else entirely? For the first time in 15 years, I felt unsure. Should I go? Should I check what he left me? Should I let the past rot where it belongs? I didn't have the solution yet, but I did know this. The narrative wasn't over. Driving back into the place I departed when I was 19 was like walking into an overexposed snapshot. Everything looked the same. Faded, washed-out stores, crumbling pavements, and the same rusty water towers standing vigil against the sky. I'd spent 15 years erecting barriers around me. I believed the walls would keep this place out of my life forever. But here I was, crossing an invisible boundary that I had promised myself I would never cross again. The air seemed thick, like the town knew my past. My phone buzzed constantly on the seat beside me, the screen flashing with texts and missed calls from my mother and brother. Lisa, please pick up. We need to talk. Just give us a chance. The words gleamed on the glass, but I didn't pick up the phone. Every vibration felt like a knock on a locked door in my chest. I drove by the cafe where Chloe used to giggle with her companions while I walked by with my head down, burning beneath their steps. It was still there, its neon sign shimmering in the twilight. And suddenly, as if fate were testing me, I heard my name. Lisa Hayes. I turned and froze. Tom Harris and Caleb Reed, two faces I hadn't seen since high school, were heading down the sidewalk toward me. They were once pals and teammates of my brother's, the type of guys who pledged beneath the lights of Friday night that they would never desert one another. Tom paused a few steps away and scratched the back of his neck. His hair had thinned, his waistline had grown, but his eyes still conveyed the remorse I remembered from the night Chloe's lie destroyed me. I can't believe it's really you, he said. Caleb shuffled nervously. We heard you left town for good. Lisa, listen. We're sorry. Back then, when Chloe said what she said, none of us. He trailed off, shame heavy in his voice. You didn't believe me, I concluded for him, my tone harsher than I intended. Tom's jaw stiffened. We should have. I knew it didn't feel right. We didn't want to get in the middle of it. Everyone was against you. We went along, and we shouldn't have. I studied them both, watched how their wedding bands gleamed beneath the street lamps as they talked about their wives, children, and the small lives they'd made while I was struggling to survive 4 states away. Every word drove the chasm between us greater. I mustered a faint grin. I'm glad it all worked out for you. I walked away, their voices following me down the street until they gave up. That evening, I met Uncle Richard in a little cafe on the outskirts of town. The aroma of coffee and fried food hung in the air, while the talk of residents echoed in the background. When I saw him, my chest clenched. He had gotten older, hair mostly gray and his frame slimmer. Yet his eyes retained a sadness that appeared to empty him out. When I approached, he stood and grabbed my hand with both of his. Lisa, he murmured quietly, as if the word might shatter. I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure you would. I sat across from him, the weight of years pressing down. Why did you reach out after everything? His shoulders dropped. Because someone has to tell you the truth about your father. He wasn't the man you remember at the end. He carried regret every single day. He never stopped thinking about you. I felt the old rage stir. He threw me out. He looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't his daughter anymore. He didn't even ask me if it was true. Richard's eyes clouded with sadness. You're right. He failed you. But in his later years, it tore him apart. He searched for you, Lisa. He even hired a private investigator last year. He bought a plane ticket. He was going to see you, face you, beg your forgiveness. The word hit me like a hammer. My breath caught. That's not possible. It is, Richard muttered. But a heart attack took him days before he was meant to leave. He died before he could make things right. I slapped a shaky hand over my face, my eyes blurring with tears I couldn't stop. For years, I convinced myself that my father despised me and died ignorant of the truth. And now for the horrible twist. He hadn't loathed me by the end. He had wanted me back. My voice cracked. He never knew I was innocent. He died thinking I was guilty, but willing to forgive me anyway. Richard leaned across the table and squeezed my hand. Yes, he wanted peace. He wanted his family whole again, even if he couldn't undo the past. Then he drove me to the lawyer's office. The building was tiny and brick-faced, its windows glowing softly in the twilight. Inside, the lawyer sat across from us, a somber man with narrow spectacles and a file ready on his desk. He gently opened it, slipping documents toward me. Your father made arrangements. He wanted you to have this, Ms. Hayes. My hands trembled while I read. A bank account with $300,000 saved and expanded throughout the years. Beyond that, a deed. A lakeside house, a sight I recalled from childhood, where I used to run barefoot over the grass, the water glistening like liquid glass in the sun. My throat constricted and tears flowed freely. My father, who had abandoned me, had left me this, a lifeline, an opportunity to start again. He died believing the accusation, yet he still wanted me to have a future and be connected to this family in some way. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing. He never knew the truth. He never knew what she did. Richard's voice was kind. He knew he loved you. That was enough for him in the end. That night, I could not stomach returning home. Instead, I sat in a tavern on the outskirts of town. The lights dimmed, the air dense with smoke and the murmurs of strangers. A tumbler of whiskey remained untouched in front of me. I looked into it and saw not my reflection, but the girl I had once been, broken and sent out at 19. The scrape of a chair interrupted my thoughts. I turned and felt my chest constrict. It was Alex, Chloe's husband. His face was creased with tiredness, and his eyes were piercing with purpose. He drew closer, his voice calm but edged with urgency. I need the truth, Lisa. All of it. Tell me what she did. I met his gaze, solid as steel. She lied. She accused me of having an affair with you. I never did. At 19, I dropped out. I lost my family, my future. I left this town in disgrace. While she went to college on their money, for 15 years, the weight of her lie crushed me. Alex's jaw tightened and his hands clenched against the bar. She destroyed everything for you, and she thought she'd never have to pay for it. His voice sank to a snarl. You can't let her walk away from this, Lisa. You need to hold her accountable for what she did. Sue her. Drag her into court. Don't let her wreck your life and then rebuild hers as if nothing happened. His words pierced me, triggering emotions I hadn't felt in years. The desire for justice, not just distance. Now, as I sit at my computer with the deed to the lake house beside me and the screen's glow lighting my face, I can hear Alex's voice ringing in my thoughts. For so long, all I wanted was space. But maybe space is no longer enough. The next afternoon, gossip spilled from hospital halls, whispered by nurses, overheard by visitors, and carried like wildfire across the little town. It came to me via a late-night message from an old high school friend, Matthew, whom I hadn't spoken with since I was 19. Lisa, the note stated, you need to know this. They tested 7 men. 7. They eventually located the real father. It's Mr. Halverson, the gym teacher. Can you believe it? I dropped the phone and stared into the dim light of the room, the name ringing in my head. Mr. Halverson, our gym instructor, the man who had yelled at me to run until my lungs burned, who smiled when I struggled with the pull-up bar, who lived on the outskirts of town in that dismal house with peeling siding. My cousin had shattered my life by pointing a shaking finger at me while she'd been with him all along. Rage, icy and suffocating, flooded me. I remembered my father's face, my mother's angry words, and my brother's silence. Everyone believed her, and all this time the truth had been simmering below the surface. The next morning, I found myself in the office of Richard Crowley, a lawyer suggested by a former colleague. His office smelled of dust and leather, and the walls were lined with heavy volumes that hadn't been touched in years. He urged me to a chair and looked at me with piercing, searching eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. I did. Every detail poured forth: the accusation, my family's betrayal, the boyfriend who fled, the years of exile. Richard listened attentively, his pen scraping over a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back and tapped his pen against the surface. "Lisa, you have a case. This isn't just a personal tragedy. This is defamation, damages stretching over 15 years. Your cousin's lie cost you your education, your reputation, your family. Now, with the hospital revelations confirming the truth, we have leverage, a strong case. If you're willing to fight, I can help you." I swallowed hard, my hands shaking. For the first time in years, I felt a fire inside me, not just wrath, but purpose. I left his office and headed to the lake cottage, my father's final gift. It appeared weary, as if waiting for someone to love it back to life. Cracked shutters hung loosely, the porch steps sagged, and ivy climbed the walls as if it had taken control. I stood there, the key in my palm, whispering into the still air. "You wanted me to have this, Dad. Maybe this is where it begins again." Renovating the house became my therapy. The smell of sawdust, the sensation of sandpaper smoothing aged wood, the gratifying thump of a hammer against nails, it kept me steady. But it also brought me face to face with ghosts. One afternoon, I went to the local hardware store to get paint and tools, and there he was, Nick, my ex, the man who once held my hand under the bleachers, who promised me forever, and then dropped me like a stone when my cousin's lie poisoned the air. His hair was shorter now, flecked with gray at the temples, and a gold wedding band glistened on his hand as he loaded supplies into his cart. He halted when he saw me, eyes widening as if he'd seen a ghost. "Lisa." His voice broke, soft but trembling. "I didn't know you were back." I clasped the items in my hands, every muscle tense. "Nick," I said quietly. He took a hesitant step closer, regret shadowing his features. "I'm so sorry for everything. I was 19. I didn't know what to believe, and I was scared. I should have stood by you, but I—" His words became noise. The betrayal still stung too deeply. I dropped the products on the counter, slid the cash over, and turned away. "Lisa, please," he pleaded, desperation in his tone. But I walked out without looking back. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward, but I refused to let him see me break. That night, in the stillness of the study facing the dark lake, I opened my laptop. I had been carrying the weight of silence for 15 years, but I was tired of hiding. My fingers trembled as I typed, describing every detail of my trauma: the accusation, the exile, the years spent rebuilding my life while my cousin thrived on the guilt of others. I ended with the truth. The hospital tests had confirmed that Alex was never the father. Then I pressed publish. By dawn, my phone had exploded. Notifications came in by the hundreds. Old classmates I hadn't heard from in years were tagging, commenting, sharing. "Lisa, I'm so sorry. We should have known better. She didn't deserve this. Chloe destroyed her life and walked away. Unbelievable." Even those who had once mocked me in the corridors sent apologies. Some tagged my cousin directly, demanding answers. Then I saw it. My younger brother James had commented, "I'm sorry, Lisa. I should have been there. I should have told you about Dad. I don't expect forgiveness." His words cut me like a blade. That evening, he arrived at the lake house. I saw him standing by my truck, the setting sun throwing a soft gold across his face. He looked older, worn down by guilt, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lisa," he said, "please, can we talk?" I crossed my arms, my chest tight. "What's left to say?" He swallowed hard. "I was a kid too. I didn't know how to handle it. I believed everyone. I thought you—" I snapped. "You thought I was guilty, and instead of standing by me, you abandoned me. You let me rot. Do you know what it's like to sleep in your car at 19 because your family thinks you're a monster?" His eyes filled with tears. "I regret it every single day. I swear I do. But I can't undo it. You can't, I said coldly. And you can't give me back what I've lost. My education, my father, my life. You didn't even tell me when he died. Do you know how much I hate you for that? James's shoulders slumped. I was wrong. I was a coward. I don't expect forgiveness, but please don't shut me out forever. I turned away from him, my chest burning. You're 15 years too late, James. I went inside and shut the door. The silence was suffocating. My hand shook as I sat at my father's desk and opened my laptop once more. I had more to say. The world needed to hear it. And as I typed, one thought echoed in my mind. This was not over. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and tension. Every seat was filled, the air heavy with whispers. The same people who had crossed the street to avoid me years ago now craned their necks for a glimpse. I sat at the plaintiff's table, palms pressed flat on polished mahogany, my heart thundering beneath my ribs. For 2 weeks, I listened to my life dissected in cold, clinical terms. For 2 weeks, lawyers referred to me not as Lisa, but as the plaintiff. The accused turned victim. Across the room sat Chloe, pale, thin, her once sharp jaw trembling in shame. Alex, her estranged husband, sat rigid beside her like a stranger. And now the moment had come. The judge's voice rang out, calm but heavy with authority. In the matter of Hayes versus Hayes, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff, Lisa Hayes. The defendant is ordered to pay $1.5 million in damages. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My knees nearly buckled under the table. I gripped the edge until my knuckles whitened. The words sank into me like sunlight after years of darkness. I had won. But it wasn't about money. It was about being vindicated, about finally being seen. Ms. Hayes, the judge continued, you will also publish a public apology to Ms. Hayes, acknowledging your false accusation and the damage it has caused. Chloe rose slowly, her hands trembling as she unfolded a paper. Her voice wavered. I, Chloe Hayes, falsely accused my cousin, Lisa Hayes, of having an affair with my husband. I knew it was untrue. My actions caused her to lose her education, her family, and 15 years of her life. I deeply regret the pain I caused. Her words echoed through the chamber, thin, brittle, meaningless. No one applauded. No one pitied her. They just stared. By the time she finished, Alex was gone. He had slipped out before her apology began. When the judge dismissed us, I stood on shaking legs. As I stepped out of the courthouse, the spring air hit me like a tide. The crowd dispersed, and there they were, my family. My mother stood before me, her hands clasped as if holding herself together. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. Behind her, James hovered, his eyes downcast with guilt. Lisa, my mother whispered, inching closer. Please. I stopped just before her. The courthouse doors slammed shut behind me. The air smelled of cut grass and exhaust, but all I could taste was bitterness. You threw me out, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I begged you to believe me, and you called me a liar. You didn't just turn your back, you kicked me out. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Her face crumbled as tears streamed freely. We were scared. We thought... You thought I was guilty, I cut in, and instead of standing by me, you destroyed me. You let me starve. You let me freeze. I was a girl mom, your daughter. Her shoulders shook with sobs, but I felt no release, only the hollow ache of years lost. James stepped forward. Lisa, he said quietly, I should have been your brother. I should have told you about Dad. I should have been there. I turned on him, my words blazing. You weren't. You stayed. You kept your head down while I fought to survive. You sat at the dinner table while I was sleeping in my car. You didn't even tell me when he died. My voice cracked. Do you know how much I hate you for that? He flinched, like I had struck him. I know, he whispered. And I'm sorry every day. I'm sorry. I shook my head. You're 15 years too late. The silence between us was unbearable. I turned and walked past them both, my chest tight, my breath uneven. Chloe's life crumbled after that. Alex filed for divorce within a month, and their custody battle was vicious. The truth of her falsehoods, the public apology, the humiliation, it all caught up with her. In the end, the judge granted Alex full custody of Max. Watching her collapse in court was like watching a glass house shatter, inevitable and permanent. And, Max's surgery went well. I visited him in the hospital soon after. The scent of antiseptic lingered, the soft beep of machines breaking the silence. He looked pale but smiled faintly, his small hand clutching an action figure. Hi, I said gently, pulling up a chair. I'm Lisa, your cousin. He blinked up at me. My dad says you're good. Are you? The question almost broke me. I swallowed hard. I try to be, I whispered. And if you ever need someone, you can call me anytime. His eyes lit up. He nodded. For a brief moment, the years of bitterness eased. I moved my construction company back home, investing in growth, new trucks, new tools, new contracts. The post that had once been a cry for justice became the cornerstone of my future. People wanted to see me succeed. Jobs poured in, and within a year, my firm was one of the most reputable in the state. One evening, I drove past the lake house. The porch lights glowed softly against the water. I thought about my father. He didn't live to see me vindicated, but his final gift gave me the chance to rebuild. I whispered into the night, "I'm trying, Dad. I really am." As for Chloe, she became a pariah. In town, they called her Poison. She lost her job at the law firm, her friends stopped calling, and her family spoke her name only in shame. She walked the streets with her head lowered, the once proud woman reduced to a whisper. As for me, I began therapy. The first session was hard. I sat stiffly, staring at the ticking clock, lavender in the air. But slowly I began to process the years of anger, grief, and shame. Slowly I started to heal. My family calls me often now. I let the phone ring before answering, keeping conversations short, polite. I'm not ready to sit across the table, not ready to share a meal. But I tell myself, baby steps. For the first time in 15 years, I'm not defined by a lie. I'm not the girl who was kicked out.